BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, it's Anna Hill here with the Farming Today podcast, where a new report shows farm assurance schemes are not working. It says too many farmers feel farm assurance is done to them rather than delivered with them. And why a court case about sand eels is more important than it might sound.
This case is one of the most important for the environment in 45 years, because if we lose it, we will not be able to protect our environment in our sovereign waters, and that is ludicrous.
We'll have more on that a little later. First, though, January might seem a quiet time on the farm, but this week we're looking at all the jobs that have to be done despite the chill at this time of year. At Popham's farm on the Clinton Devon estate, they calved close to 100 cows in December, so now it's time to wean the newborns. Calf rearer Charlie Bryant-Evans and assistant farm manager Phil Pipkin showed Fiona Clampin what's involved.
Calf feeding starts around 5:30 in the morning. As soon as you turn the lights on, they know you're here and the kind of dawn chorus of mooing starts. Morning, girls. We've mixed up the milk and we give it to the calves in group feeders. So they pick a teat. Sometimes they fight, but we make sure everyone gets some.
So clearly they love the milk.
They do.
But
yeah.
This is the thing that you're trying to wean them off.
We start that process at 8 weeks, so they cut down to 2 litres twice a day to begin with for the first 2 weeks, and then we up the solids gradually.
So you've got calves at different stages of weaning here. Can you
Yes.
sort of talk me through that?
Yes,
which ones you've got?
This middle group ranging from 11 to 12 weeks, roughly. So they're coming to the end of the weaning process. And then the slightly smaller group here to the left, they have just reached the 8-week mark. And then the youngest ones here are still babies.
Oh, they're tiny.
Yeah, they're still cute wearing their calf jackets. So they're still very much on the 3 litres twice a day, alongside the cake and the silage.
So Phil, what kind of foods do we have here?
OK, so these girls that are coming towards the end of weaning, they're mainly on what we call a TMR mixed ration. So this goes through the feeder wagon at the dairy. It's similar silage to what we feed to adult cows, with a little bit of concentrate mixed into it to help them with their protein levels. This we gradually mix in with the longer fibre haylage, the straight-baled haylage that they've been having since birth, so that they can gradually get used to it. They tend to get very excited about this because it's got a few goodies in it. But the idea of this is just to ease that transition for when they get up to our weaned unit.
Can this be quite a stressful time for them?
So weaning is a point of stress, which is why we do everything that we can to spread it out and to introduce everything gradually. What you don't want to do with calves is just take milk away cold turkey. That would inhibit growth, inhibit welfare. Anything that's potentially not growing as quickly as it had been growing on the milk, or just looking slightly less well conditioned, we might knock it back a pen, give her a bit more milk and let her try again.
Phil Pipkin there from Clinton Devon Estates. The first courtroom trade battle since Brexit is due to start next week over fishing rights in the North Sea. The dispute is over the humble sand eel, a collective name for several species of small fish which are food for larger fish and many seabirds, including puffins and kittiwakes, which are protected. The UK has banned vessels from catching sand eels in its waters to protect the wildlife that depend on them. Well, now that ban is being challenged in court, with the European Union saying it discriminates against Danish fishing companies and breaches the post-Brexit trade deal. Paul Seddon is the BBC political reporter who's been following the case.
The UK government says that continued fishing of sand eel in the North Sea, along with the effects of climate change, poses a threat to the overall number of sand eels and therefore to the marine ecosystem. Now, the UK has actually banned its own vessels from fishing sand eels since 2021, but under Rishi Sunak, it went a step further in March last year. It banned all vessels from fishing sand eel in the English waters of the North Sea. Now, that's a ban that Labour has kept in place, and the Scottish Government has done the same for Scottish waters. Now, this ban followed a consultation. The DEFRA said there would be an impact on EU fishermen, but there was sufficient evidence to support a total ban for supporting marine wildlife.
What is the court case about then? It's about whether the UK can restrict access for conservation reasons?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, so sand eel is a jointly managed stock under that trade deal, which came into effect in 2021. Now, what that means is that every year both sides have to agree what's called the total allowable catch for the species. Now, Danish fishermen do fish sand eel to sell it to producers of fish oil and fish meal, which is a kind of food for animals or other types of fish. Now, really, what this comes down to is the balance between the UK's right to take conservation measures and the right of EU vessels to gain access to UK waters to fish the sand eel commercially. Now, the EU's argument really has kind of two elements to it. One is they're questioning whether this full ban is really supported by the best available scientific advice. And the other thing is they're questioning whether the ban is proportionate given the impact on the Danish fishing industry. Now, the UK says that it is. It's defended its use of scientific advice. And actually, they're making quite an interesting argument because the UK is saying the ban is actually necessary to uphold a different part of the trade deal that commits both sides to fishing sustainably.
And what could the court decide?
So this is actually a panel of three mutually agreed international trade judges who are going to look at this. The EU is looking for a ruling that this ban breaches the trade deal. Now, the UK is obviously hoping that that challenge is dismissed. This is the first time that this arbitration mechanism has actually been used under the trade deal. They can't change UK law. But under the trade deal, if they said to the UK, you've got to change this, and the UK government, the Scottish government, failed to respond, then ultimately the EU would be able to take countermeasures, ultimately including a proportionate level of tariffs.
BBC political reporter Paul Seddon. Well, Charles Clover is co-founder of the Blue Marine Foundation, a marine conservation charity. He told me this is a test case for the UK's ability to protect its own marine wildlife.
It's fairly catastrophic for the environment if it goes down. I don't think that it will, because I think that according to the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, we are entirely entitled to do what we are doing. These countries are just testing it. But the irony is that they are testing protections that actually exist under their own laws. There is a law that says that seabird populations should be healthy. They're supposed to be observing this as well. So if they take this down, this ban on sand eel fishing on the Dogger Bank and in UK waters, they will be taking down their ability to meet EU law. I can't understand it.
And what does this mean then for the rules in our marine protected areas? You know, some people would like to see more protection for those marine protected areas, wouldn't they?
This case is one of the most important for the environment in 45 years, because if we lose it, and I don't think we will not be able to protect our environment in our sovereign waters, and that is ludicrous. If it goes down, there's a probability that France, which wants to trawl in our waters, in our marine protected areas, will be back for them too. That's the reality of the situation. So this is very serious, and I'm confident that we will win, but it will be catastrophic for the environment if we don't.
Charles Clover. Too many farmers feel farm assurance is done to them rather than delivered with them. That's the finding of an independent review into farm assurance, which looked at whether schemes like Red Tractor and RSPCA Assured are working well for farmers and supply chains. It was commissioned after Red Tractor introduced a Greener Farms commitment. That would have seen farmers share environmental information with retailers to help those retailers meet sustainability targets. The scheme angered many farmers and has since been shelved. I asked one of the Assurance Scheme Review's authors, former Chief Executive of Scotland Food and Drink, James Withers, what went wrong.
Our view actually is that the fallout from that and some of the farmer anger and disquiet around that was actually symptomatic of a system that had drifted too far from its farming audience and farmers who had lost confidence actually in Red Tractor. If it hadn't been the Green Farm commitment, I suspect something else would have come along to act as a catalyst for these issues to come to the surface. Hopefully now they have come to the surface, we can try and chart a way forward.
So the review did look at assurances more broadly. What did you find?
So we found a system that was fragmented. It hadn't really developed collectively. In some ways, that's not surprising. We have 4 nations in the UK with different government administrations and policy frameworks. We have multiple different assurance schemes operating in these different parts of the UK to different standards. What we found actually was that in devolved areas, so in Scotland, in Wales, in Northern Ireland, these schemes are working pretty well. They've got high levels of trust amongst their farming audience, but we found that the UK-wide schemes was where there was a real struggle, and a lot of farmers felt as though the likes of Red Tractor is now being done to them rather than being delivered with them. So there's a lot of improvements required for all schemes, but particularly the UK-wide schemes.
Do you think Red Tractor should go?
No, and we don't think that the farm assurance system should go either. I think the reality is that Red Tractor has lost the confidence of a lot of farmers, but we don't think it needs to be an existential...
And consumers?
No, we think it's delivering for consumers. We've got no reason to think otherwise. We don't think that the current challenges facing Red Tractor need to become an existential crisis, but they need to act, and they need to act quickly or else it could become existential. It needs a different leadership approach. The board, the senior leadership team and the owners, including the farm unions and AHDB, need to understand the level of concern there is amongst the farming community.
You want the whole area to be simpler. Do you then get rid of all the separate schemes and make just one new one?
So we don't think there's any case for some mass harmonisation across the UK with some single big monster scheme running everything across the 4 corners of the UK. There's very good reasons that schemes exist in devolved areas, not least the brands are really strong. Brands like Scotch Beef, Welsh Lamb, they are strong in the market and they're important. However, there is a need to think about how these schemes can work better together. One example, in Scotland, the livestock schemes and the cereal scheme, 2 different bodies, 2 different sets of standards, but they collaborate to make sure inspections or assessments can be done on the same day. That kind of harmonisation of activity, if not standards, we think could deliver a lot more simplicity and reduce some of the stress on farm, because that was one of the things that came out loud and clear from farmers, a huge emotional toll and stress being built upon them from the assurance system, which was starting to feel quite make or break for them.
Your recommendations centre on giving the farmer more voice. You say it should be farmer-led, but isn't that allowing them to mark their own homework? We've heard cases on this programme of farms that fail to meet scheme standards, but they've not been removed from the assurance schemes. So there is a question about how they're actually working.
So the way really good farm assurance schemes work, and we've put in the report some common characteristics of really good farm assurance schemes, they're collaborative through the supply chain. So the cereal scheme in Scotland is actually a cooperative of all parts of that supply chain, from the cereal farmer to the maltster to the miller that's making bread, to the retailers that are involved in the end product. So you've got that whole chain approach. We think that's what should happen. The challenge we've got at the moment is farmers will look at Red Tractor and they feel very much as though the retailer tail is wagging the dog. They're driving the standards and farmers aren't involved enough. Now, you can debate all day whether what the evidence for that is or whether that is really the case, but perception is everything. They need to get back to that kind of position where farmers feel as though they've got a proper voice in the system.
James Withers, one of the commissioners of the UK Farm Assurance Review. The National Farmers Union, NFU Cymru, the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board and Red Tractor have all welcomed the assurance scheme review. They say it is significant and they've emphasised that they need time to consider it in detail before they respond to it. That's all from us. I'm Anna Hill. The producer was Heather Simons. Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.